was actually a moment like when I was in the refuge with my mum, and I was sort of seeing her. I remember that moment, like I remember watching her, being super aware of what was going on and letting that sort of moment simmer and sit on me a bit. At that point, it was like serious. I was like, I'm going to make my family successful.
He was born into adversity, adopted as a child, and faced challenges that could have broken anyone. From growing up in a refuge at 12 to serving time in prison, Bradley Gimbert has turned hardships into fuel. Now, he's building a business that empowers Aboriginal Australians and proves that you can turn your rock bottom into a launchpad.
So there was a massive period of my life where I was sort of like, no, why me? Or whatever else, and the world's maybe against me. And it's like, yeah, it could be, but what happens if you overcome that? What does that make you? To prove yourself, like to yourself, which is ultimately the only thing that you actually get to live with. You're born alone and you die alone, and the only thing that sort of continues through that is your opinion of yourself and what you know and how you trust yourself.
Bradley Gimbert, welcome to The House Story.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Mate, I'm pumped to go through your story today. It's an interesting story, and so I'm keen to just go back to when you were young, and so maybe you can just tell us about young Bradley.
Me dead. No, so I was, so I guess just to cut it all the way back, so I was born a heroin baby, so both my parents were heroin addicts. I was born with heroin in my system and then adopted out by my mother. My father was in jail at the time. And luckily for me, I was adopted by my mum and dad. Bless his soul, he's passed away recently. But my dad that adopted me, he is a Barkindji man. He was taken from his mother. We never was able to meet her. And then he wanted to sort of give back in some sort of way. So he adopted me. And my people, the Wyoming people, come from Canberra, Gimbert, and I was just fortunate enough to be adopted by him and my mum, and then we grew up in Western Sydney. So, that was a little bit about, I guess, how I started. When I grew up, like growing up, I feel people always ask me, it's like, you know, have you always had this mindset and wanted to be successful and things like that? And to be honest, as far back as I can remember, I did want to sort of be successful. I remember actually my mum's dad, so my pop, when I say my mum and dad, I mean my mum and dad, that's my mother and father, biological. I don't know them, so I'll refer to mum and dad as my adopted mum and dad. I remember my mum's dad, so like my pop, would ask me, he's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Actually, no, people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my pop was telling me that I should be a barrister because they make, I think it was $600 every 6 minutes. And I just remember thinking, that's a lot of money, so I'm going to be a barrister. I'm like 6 or 7 years old. And so people would come over to the house and they're like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I'm like, a barrister. And they're like, wow, this kid's really fucking smart. I'm just counting money in my brain, you know? Yeah. And as far back as I can remember, I've always like wanted to do that. I don't know why that is, but at some point, so I guess when I was adopted, young fella, everything was going super well. I was like very smart kid. I could read at a very young age. People were sort of blown away by all that. Like intelligence was really good. I was a good speller. They used to read words off the back of the shampoo bottle, try to trip me up. I could fucking spell them somehow, little brainiac. But then when we got to around about 10, 11, 12, so we had a good house, everything was going good. We lived in Doonside, so we grew up in Doonside, young years. Huntington Heights, like the flash side of Doonside. So we hadn't hit like poverty or anything yet. So once we got to, I think I was about 9 or 10, Mum got really sick. Interest rates, I think, had gone up at that point. Dad had to take a bit of a pay cut. He was working for himself, then he had to get employed, and so it was less money in the hand and things like that. And so basically they couldn't really afford to keep up with the mortgage repayments. It wasn't a good time to sell, and they had to sell the house at a loss, and that ultimately bankrupted my dad. And that point there, like I was always pretty switched on, but that point there was sort of where it got a little bit serious for me. A lot of people have like different like inflection points and where they, I don't know, switch on or have some sort of adversity or whatever. But I remember being like really aware of my upbringing. I knew my mum like had sort of given me up. I used to write to her at some point, and at some point I sort of realised, okay, or my mother, I was like, okay, got my mum here, got my mum there. What the fuck's going on? How do I have 2 months? And I would ask my mum, my adopted mum, how's this? What's going on here? And she would be like, just didn't want to answer too much, and I'd just corner her all the time, and I just like a bit of hyperfixator. Like I would sort of be, what do you mean? How does that work? What do you mean I got 2 months? How does this work? I got you here, she's here, she's my mum, what's going on? Until eventually I sort of could paint the picture of sort of what was going on. And then as I sort of grew up a little bit, I think I heard some people let the cat out of the bag a little bit. And so long story short is I knew that I was basically a heroin baby. My mum had given me up, and if not for my mum and dad adopted me, then I wouldn't have had an opportunity at life. I knew that. So when we sort of lost the house and went bankrupt, what had happened was sold the house. We moved out to Glenmore Park with my brother, and I think my sister was living in Parramatta at the time. My brother was living in Glenmore Park. I don't know if my sister had a kid yet. No, she hadn't. My brother had though, and so we were sort of shipping between there. Mum and dad got another rental, and we were sort of making that work. Then they couldn't afford that rental. We got a rental together as a family, and sort of was like this slow cascade down. So I'd done like year 5 and 6 there, and so there was a period there, maybe a year, 2 years, where we were sort of bouncing around couch, to sort of just making it work. And then me and my mum ended up in a refuge for the last year of it, and then that was just women and children's refuge, and my dad was staying with my sister. And then eventually, after a year after that, then we got a housing commission house, and I started probably halfway through the term in year 7 or second term in year 7 at 7 Hills. So we're back to Layla Park. So that period there, and there was actually a moment like when I was in the refuge with my mum, and I was sort of seeing her, sobbing over a bit of I think, what are they? They're Vivo or Vovo biscuits, the one with the little marshmallow things on them. They're shit now, in case you're wondering. So they're not the same, aren't it? And so they, I remember that moment, like I remember watching her and letting that, like being super aware of what was going on and letting that sort of moment simmer and sit on me a bit. And I was like, I'm going to make us like successful. I'm really going to be like, I always wanted to be, when I was young, I was like a cute little kid, charging them for getting drinks out the fridge and like getting just laugh, like a bit of a cute way. But at that point it was like serious. I was like, I'm going to make my family successful if I need to sort of give my life or whatever to do so. I don't know what sort of resolve I've got at like the ripe old age of 11 or 12 years old, but the most serious I could be about it is like, I was definitely serious. So I was like, I'm going to be successful if this is the last sort of thing I do. So I just was sort of really attuned to sort of how do I make money and be successful from that point. So as soon as I could work, I had a job at Macca's. I was going to school at 7 Hills. Now that was very different to sort of how I was going through primary school and things like that. Because there was, I guess, I'll fucking get picked on. I was the new kid. Once people picked out that you're Aboriginal, it's not that you get picked on for being Aboriginal. It was just always the same shit, and I was just sick of it. It's like from year 5 to sort of year 7, there was like your mum jokes. My mum was like in intensive care in hospital, so I was like sort of already angry and fighting about that and stuff like that. Then I get to year 7, I'm just fucking sick of it. I've had like 3 or 4 years of just this and that and the Aboriginal kid and whatever, like just whatever the fuck they could sort of poke at you. Because again, like at that primary school I was a new kid and just so much of that. And so when I got into year 7, same sort of thing. It's like, oh, this new kid, who's that? Oh, you're Aboriginal. How much Aboriginal? You don't look Aboriginal. You look Lebanese. Blah, blah, blah. Same old fucking shit. And then it's like, and then that would get a little bit too far. And maybe it was probably not even that serious, but I was just taking it personally. And so getting angry. And then I started like trying to fight, but I was a small little kid, couldn't really fucking fight. And so they would continue picking on me even worse because they realized I couldn't fight. So then I got into boxing. And boxing really sort of saved me a little bit because firstly, I'd learned how to defend myself. Secondly, it helped me channel that anger and that energy. So I was like a super angry sort of kid. And then that helped me have like a way to sort of close the loop. I got all this shit that's going on. And to be honest, at any point of there, you could have asked me like, oh man, it must have been hard. And I probably would have agreed with you, but in hindsight at that sort of point, I realized all those things are the things that give me the energy to do the things that I sort of want to do. Probably not at that point just yet, but I know that now, like in hindsight. And so anyway, got into boxing, become quite good at boxing. I'd actually lost my first like 3 fights, so most kids would have fucking quit at that point. But the fourth fight was against the state champion, or I think it was like only a PCYC state champion, but I won that and become like the PCYC state champion. I was like, oh shit, here we go. Yeah, wow. Then I won a couple of fights, then lost a couple, then won a couple, then lost a couple, but I was always fighting up. My trainer, his name's Terry McKinley, he's trained hundreds of fighters. He's a champion. He helped me get on the straight and narrow because I was, I wasn't necessarily going out of pocket, but I was working at Macca's, I was starting to box, but I was also getting involved with some sort of bad kids who were doing breaking enters and doing a bunch of shit like that. I wasn't doing any breaking enters because I was like freaked out about that, but I was still getting around it and involved. And I started like selling drugs and doing basically all the shit that kids would do growing up in the poorest areas of Western Sydney. Just in I guess my ambition, I wasn't trying to be a gangster or anything. I was just trying to make extra money and try and make it work, because my parents were just getting like poorer and poorer and sicker and sicker. And so, doing whatever I could, that failing, me fighting, just was taking its own sort of path. And so I guess boxing helped me out, but what was happening is actually one time, there's a funny story. So one time I'm with these sort of kids and they had jumped a cab and I got stuck in the cab, and the cab's driving me to the police station. Indian guy's like, oh, we're taking you to the fucking police station. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm freaking out. First time I've been like close to being in any real trouble. And he pulls up, there's a car parked, Layla Park, there's always some shit going on. There's a car parked maybe 2 streets away from where he took me. Pulls up behind the cop car, and just by chance, like, it's my trainer's house, Terry, and he's out the front arguing with his neighbour. Cops have been called because he's like punched on with his neighbour or something. And then Terry comes up to the window and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? Starts abusing the cabbie. What are you, kidnapping kids and shit? Now he's trying to fight the cabbie. Cops come and break it up. And then Terry throws $20 through the window, says let him out, and he takes me into his house, and we sort of got much closer. So I was always the kid that was at the class. Yeah. But he didn't really know. He's like, I know you for fucking boxing. Get this kid out, whatever. Got me involved in the police program. Then I was on this police program with some other sort of naughty kids, but I was already sort of going to boxing. But that helped me sort of, because then I had this cop named Brad sort of making sure that I was going and keeping me going. And so yeah, just that was an interesting sort of journey. But Terry and boxing and that sort of weaponizing my energy was, if not for that, I don't know what sort of would happen. But so we went through this sort of period of, everything's going well, lost everything due to, I guess, financial pressures, then ended up in housing commission, very poor sort of area, or wasn't super poor at the time, but the house that we're in was dog shit and we had no money and we just were not used to being that sort of level of poverty. And then working, I guess me then becoming the only kid at home, working as much as I could, also, battling with my sort of anger about the whole situation, that getting me into trouble, trying to stay on the narrow path. Then I was sort of still just super motivated. I'm still working at Macca's, I'm still doing whatever I could. I'm working the weekends with my uncle. I'm doing whatever I need to. I'm sort of putting groceries in the house, like I'm doing whatever I could, but also getting in lots of trouble. So I'm sure my parents were just like, this kid is off his dial at this point. And then that sort of is what I would, in my spare time, me and my mates be hanging out, we're playing Grand Theft Auto, I'll be on my laptop, like, Googling, like, what do rich people do? This is like famous. I'm always talking about this thing because you can't underestimate how often I was doing it. Like, I don't know how to research. I'm still admin sort of, it's not my strong suit, right? But literally just Googling, looking on the Forbes list, researching the listeners of wealthy people, reading the books and stuff, and just doing whatever I could,
Why was that? Where did that interest come from?
Still from that same inflection point of when we had lost the house. I was still like, oh, we need to be successful. That's how I got into selling drugs. I'm like, everyone that's rich around here, they sell shit, And I'm like, I don't really want to get caught up doing that, but I need to sort of works. It's a business model,
Sure.
Working at Mac, 9 months was the age that you can work from. And so straight away I was like, where can I work? I applied everywhere. I used to apply everywhere, Woolies and Kmart and all the normal 14-year-old jobs. I could only get into Macca's, got in at Macca's, and I worked there for ages. It was really good.
Were you ever upset at your parents that they'd let the financial position go south?
No. Because in that position, so my dad, he, maybe didn't understand this at the time, but I knew the whole time that I was lucky to even be alive, right? Because my parents were heroin addicts. I was a heroin baby. I'm like, this is already as good as it gets, I was always upset. I'm like, I used to sort of be like, what the fuck am I meant to be, why do I need to go through all this? Everyone I've ever met, they're like, wow, that is crazy. That's the hardest shit I've ever heard, And I'm just like, yeah, I know, what the fuck, right? Right? But then I guess now I know that all that has been like a blessing because I've got to go through all those experiences and I've had the opportunity to actually learn from them, right? Like, for example, going to jail. I know what I do if I'm locked in a maximum security prison. I know how I respond. A lot of people don't know that about themselves. They're like, oh, would I, wouldn't I? Everyone likes to think they'd be some sort of tough guy and whatever. I was literally sparring guys that are doing life sentences a lot of the day and I'd be training them for packets of lollies. Like, I know what I do. Like, I make it. Everyone has that saying. It's like, oh, you throw me to the wolves and I come back in the load of bullshit. It's like, I fucking got through that shit, and I done it like flying colours, and same through all that. Like, I don't have. People have like their bloodline to fall back on. I don't have none of that. And even like Aboriginal people, they're like know exactly where their people come from. I had to look for that. I had to go and find that. I figured out where my country was, and I went and had to connect myself, and went and had to sort of meet my sister myself. She reached out to me, like thankfully, my sister Cheryl. But I had to figure all that out on my own, you know. And so I know how I respond to that. And so there was a massive period of my life where I was sort of like, you know, why me or whatever else, and the world's maybe against me. And it's like, yeah, it could be, but what happens if you overcome that? What does that make you? Does that make you like, if you're weighing yourself up against everyone else, it sort of makes you tougher than everyone else, right? And so it's a superpower, really. But besides that, you've got all of this unique sort of circumstance and opportunity to prove yourself, like to yourself, which is ultimately the only thing that you actually get to live with. You know, I've got other people that maybe think good or bad of me or whatever else, but at some point they're not going to be part of my life for whatever reason. I go to sleep and I wake up in my own self. And so what I think of myself and how I trust myself is ultimately the only thing that really matters. You know, like it's a dark way of putting it, but it's like you're born alone and you die alone. And the only thing that sort of continues through that is your opinion of yourself and what you know and how you trust yourself, you know? And so being able to go through those different things just continually built on something that I'm never going to lose, which is my own sense of self and I guess knowing myself like through and through.
When did you have that mindset shift? Because to me, it sounds like you've got a very high degree of accountability, like personal accountability. Not everybody has that. In fact, I'd probably argue that most people don't have that.
Yeah.
When did that arrive?
There was like, I could feel a little bit of it when I was like young, because like mum and dad, they sort of, not that they weren't present, but they were sort of getting beat up by life at some point, you know? And they were like, you know, he's sort of like, I understand them now. It's like, I was the only kid to go to year 12. Like, I would always be talking to them about like business ideas. I was always just out in my own realm, like just sort of crazy a bit. And so I think they had like a high degree of trust that I'd be okay and work it out. So they sort of let me do my thing. And they knew I was not like doing too much. I know they didn't think I was doing all the crazy shit that I was doing, because they learnt later on. They were just like, oh my God, what the hell? I had no idea. They thought I was just hanging out with my nerdy mates, you know, which I was to a degree, but I was also going to some of my gangster mates and they were doing some other shit, right? And so I know that there was like a period where I remember, and that sort of just built, and it'd sort of be like, it's like, you know, the thing is like, oh, I should have done that and I didn't, and that's why that little fuck up happened. And then later on, if you don't follow it again, it happens again, and it happens again. And so I had little trickles of understanding that no one's going to come save you. Like, no one's going to come save you. They're going to let you flounder. And when you say, then when I sort of started to realize is, when I say they, who am I talking about? I'm talking about the universe at large, because the people around you change. You know, you got like, oh, my parents in this time, and all my friends at this time, or whatever else. And it's like, no, the world is yours to figure out. Your life is yours to figure out. You know, and I remember learning that from a bit of a young age, because I guess the conversations around me being adopted with other people would sort of be like, oh, wow, that must be so hard for you, whatever else. And I could just feel that no one would ever completely understand or comprehend it. I'm like, how could they? They got two parents, or they got one parent, or they got people that they're actually related to and all that. And I was like, it's really hard for me to get someone to understand it. Like, the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, it's very different, you know? And so that paired up with all the next sort of things, I just remember being, you know, it's yours. It's only you that can do any of this and figure that out. And so, you know, then you fall into the trap. Like, it's not a trap, but you find people that you respect, and then you sort of cling to their, not ideas, but it's like their validation in a way, and what they think. And then you put too much weight on them. It's important to sort of figure out whose opinion you can and can't trust. But at the end of the day, you've got to make those decisions about what's wrong and right, because you've got to live with them, you know? And that sort of built over time. There was like a bit of a trickle when I was young, and then each, I guess, one of those sort of different adversities continued on that sort of path. But yeah, now it's just a complete like conviction. It's like, it's yours to figure out or fuck up or gain the benefit or downfall of.
It's so true. And what happens after school, Brad?
Oh yeah. All right. So what happens after school? So we're about maybe let's say we're at year 10 at this point. I drop out of school for a day. I do this pre-apprenticeship course with my mate. And I just remember seeing a kid drooling at the back, and I just was like, fuck, man, I can't, this is not, I've got to be doing better than this, you know? And so I went back to school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went back to school and I finished year 12. Didn't do my HSC, because I guess I had enough foresight to know that I'm mucking around still. Like I'm not focusing entirely. Still a very social sort of exercise for me, going to school. And so if I sit in ATAR, I'm definitely not going to give my best performance. So I'm not going to sit in ATAR because I consider ATAR as a mature age student. I knew that. So if I want to go to uni, I'll come back, I'll buckle down, and I'll do the test, and I'll get it then. But if I do it now, I'm not going to get anything good. Mystery mark is what I was thinking, right? So I'm not doing that. So out of year 12, I was like, what can I do? I had like a bunch of different jobs, like factory, labouring, like just whatever I could get my hands on to make a bit of money. But then I got this 100% commission job, where it was like sales. When I say sales, it was like the guys on the street selling you. I worked for the Prince of Wales Hospital sort of raffle memberships, sign you up, $30, $50, $100 a month. The commissions on those are terrible. It'd be like 15, 20 and $50 or something. And I still done okay. I made like 80 grand the first year I did it somehow on those memberships.
Wow.
I was a killer. Yeah. It was good, but it was a great experience for me because I was always a very introverted kid. Like even today, my mum's like, I just can't believe you talk to people for a living. I'm like, Mum, I've got a fucking whole company. Like, you know, she's like, it's so good to see. I'm just like, yeah. Anyway, so that was a good exercise for me to start building like my social skills and understanding like your mind and law of attraction and how to set goals and how to actually manifest them and things like that, and sort of put a science behind the things that I could already feel and do a little bit. Whereas now, like, dictating your future is like a big part of how I exist even, right? And so that was instrumental. Like I'd done that for a good year and a bit, I think. I was the youngest team leader in the company. I was on so they had like a national, I won't say the company, but they were, you know, they've been sued for hundreds of millions of dollars now for pyramid schemes, but it doesn't matter. So I was on their like leaderboards. I'd make the national leaderboard every now and then. I was very proud of that. Yeah. And I remember like a moment of being like, oh, you can work hard and do whatever you want. Because I had a guy called Brad on my team who was double my age. He fucking hated me for that reason. But but I remember sort of being like, well, I'm like 18, 19, pushing 19. And I've got, you know, guys that are plus 30 listening to me teach them about sales that I learned a year ago. And I like maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I was talking to you, you would 100% being like, what'd you say? Speak up. Like you fucking quiet, right? So yeah, that was an interesting turning point. The business and I guess the way that it was meant to go, I was meant to get promoted and do all this other stuff, and there's a bunch of like weird things going on in the office between people, and so I couldn't get those promotions, and I was like, all right, well, I'll leave. So long story short, I left, and then I worked in a couple of different call centers, and they were like cold calling, so not really my thing. Didn't really work out. Then I had this identified position lined up at Sydney Water, and then I lost it because I had a criminal record. Long story short, but the interview period took months. Like it took like 3 or 4 months. Lots of different applicants went through that rigmarole. I got there. I signed the contract. I was meant to start. I was actually in the lobby the day I was meant to start, and they called me, and they were like, "You can't start because your criminal record came back and you have something on it." And I was like, "Mate, I'm downstairs. Like, can we just like?" And they're like, nah. And they stopped answering my calls and they didn't have to go. I went back home and I was shattered because that was a project management traineeship. So after 2 years, I would have been on like 240 plus. I would have been on big money. Yeah. Benefit now, but I was still living house commission. You know, I was like at that point working full time. There was a bit of a expectation for me to chip in a lot on the, like, not the bills, but the, you know, a little bit of board and do a bit of like, most of the groceries and things like that. So, you know, I was really, you know, feeling at that point because I'd been 3 months out of like proper work in the hope that I was going to get this job. I was like putting it out there, I'm going to get this job. And then I've missed a little bit of a step there, but the way I got into there, so I was working at Toll, my dad's old workplace, and then I started a personal training course, and through that personal training course I'd done a diploma of business, and that diploma of business turned my eyes onto project management, and then I seen the project management job and I applied for it, and that's how I got on the Sydney Water train, right? So I guess quick digression. But then after project management traineeship, that didn't really work out. I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? So at this point I've got a clear understanding that rich people invest in property. because of all my Google searches and Forbes list looking, like it's clear that the common denominator is property. So if you look on a Forbes list, it's like something property, something, property development, property, like it's heavily weighted towards property. Right? And now we know today that more millionaires are created every single year through property than everything else combined. So it's not, it's definitely not missing the boat. So property is something that I need to do. I didn't know anything about property. I wouldn't have been able to tell you at the time that I was living in one. I wouldn't have been able to tell you that. I just knew like rich people, property, copy that. At some point, I'm going to have to do that. So then I start working with my brother doing gyp rocking. My brother don't really get along, but we were working doing gyp rocking. I was a gyp rock labourer. I had to wear a green helmet because I hadn't been on the job site longer than 3 months, which means like watch out for that guy. He's a danger. Yeah, and so they'd been doing the worst jobs. But at one point, I was like, okay, this is my plan Z. I've shut the bed on so many different occasions. Now all I've got is I'm going to work this terrible job that I hate. I'm going to save up. I think I've worked it out. That was like about 50 grand, 60 grand. That might take me about 3 years on my current wage. And then I'm going to be able to buy a property. And I found this company online where you can pay them and they'll invest in property for you. And so that's my plan. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep slugging it out, working, hating life until I get this money, and then I'm going to invest in property, and I'm going to be rich after that, apparently, right? And so I'm just going about my thing, and I've got the company on my Facebook, following their page. And then one of the times I was just like, fuck, I was up all the way up in the building, like with the radio off, like hiding from the bosses to make me sweep up, just do random shit. They would be like, tape up that window, and I tape it up, and they're like, now take it off, just get me doing nonsense. And so I was up there hiding one of these times, and I seen them online, had posted a job ad for call center position. Now I've got all this call center experience at this point, and I'm like, perfect, applied for it, went for the job, and like basically, long story short, I got the job, and that was my start in property investment. So I was in a buyer's agency. So there's lots of successful property investors in there. My old sort of ad hoc sort of business partner, mentor person was in there. My first GM, who's now one of my genuine business partner, was in there. Lots of good mortgage brokers, lots of people that I respect. They were all in there. One of my mates was working in there, Colin, the boxer. And everything was, I guess, I was like, this is sort of like wonderland for what it is that I'm looking for, you know? It was a group interview, and I remember being the sort of hyper fixated that I am. They were mapping it out in the pyramid scheme that they always do. They're going like, this is where you start, and you can work here, and then you can make here, and our guys up here, they make this amount of dollars a year. And I'm like, okay, cool. How long does it take to get there? And they're like, oh, the quickest anyone's done it is like 6 months, sort of dangling the carrot in front of me. And I'm like, okay. And then I sort of cornered them, bit of sales experience here. And I'm sort of like, well, if I beat all the records here, can I then get promoted and do this? And they're like, yeah, well, I guess, for sure, not thinking I was going to do it. I go into the call centre. Luckily for me, Colin, my mate, yep, I can say it. He's not great at sales, good at boxing, not great at sales. So he was the leader in the call centre. So it was like hang of fruit. So I came in and started smashing it. Me and another guy called Ali, and we were sort of competing, but we become sort of the two call centre G's there. Anyway, so I did it, and after the 6 months, I'm like, well, you said I could be a sales consultant now, so you got to let me be a sales consultant. I'm 20 years old, got no property, I'm going to start telling people what to do with their money. And so anyway, so he gave me an opportunity, and I started doing the sales, and it was really hard, but I guess I stretched my experience to sort of get there. But then I sort of started becoming, I became a mortgage broker in there, started actually doing deals, everything's going super well, and I thought this is my ticket, this is my path. So that was what's happening on the career side. Socially, I've continued down the path of being basically not a good fucking person, criminal, not necessarily a bad person, but I'm just like selling shit that people use, things like that, getting into dramas, getting into fights, continuing down this sort of line, which is not. So I've got these two sort of separating paths,
At the same time.
At the same time, yeah. So the career way was like turbulent. So it'd start, stop, I'm working this shit job, I'm not, whatever. Meanwhile, on the weekend, I'm spending my weekends at parties, being the guy, and making money there. I was making more money than my wage doing all that other shit, right? And so that was, that was like me 18, 19, 20s, or 18, 19 sort of thing. And so going down that path, like I become, I don't know, a little bit known there. Like I wasn't sort of this this kid doing shit. I was making some waves. And long story short, so I'm a bit of a fighter. I'm, got a bit of ego about myself. I can fight. I'm a tough guy, whatever. So in Layla Park, there was like lots of sort of unsavory characters. To cut a long story short, there was like a guy that I'd beat up one time who was following my girlfriend home. And so beat him up for following my girlfriend home. She told me about it. She freaked out. I seen him one time. I was like, you come here. We have a fight. Normal stuff, I suppose, for the time. Then fast forward a few years, which is like maybe a couple of months before I started the property company. The same guy was caught like trying to break into my niece's bedroom in his underwear.
Jeez.
Same guy, so they're full grown men. So I was like, okay, I know this guy. It's all good. I'll sort it out. I'm the uncle. Let me sort this shit out. I go down to his house. I'm like, come outside. I want to talk to you. We argue through the door. I have a bit of a rage fit. I break the door down. I rip it off. Home invasion. And I go into his house and I beat the shit out of him and put him in a coma.
Jeez.
Right? And so you obviously can't do that. And so I beat him up like, that was the worst I ever beat anyone up. Like it was actually crazy. It was like an awakening moment for me. I was like, you need to fucking... Anyway, so I'd done that. And then I hadn't been charged with anything serious yet. I've been charged, and that's why I lost the Sydney Water job, but I hadn't been charged with any violent crimes or anything like that. So I got, like, basically they charged me on suspicion for it. They didn't have any proof. But then I was on bail. And so while I was on bail, then I started at the company, started doing the thing, working really hard, become a mortgage broker, become a consultant, bought my first property. Everything was going really well. And then sentencing day comes while I'm at the tip top of my career. And I was thinking that I was actually going to get away with it because I've done so well so far and blah, blah, blah. They'll see my merit. Wrong. And so I got sentenced to 2.5 years total. So I got 2.5 years on the top, 1 year on the bottom, which means 1 year jail, 18 months parole, which is for home evasion and grievous bodily harm, which are two serious offences. That was like the lottery. So at the time, I didn't think I was lucky. I was shattered. But once I got to jail and I met people with one of my charges doing like 7 years, 10 years, 11 years, 4 years, like I realised, I was like, I was probably looking down the barrel of like fucking 12 years realistically if I had some other charges. If I'd done that now, I'd be going to jail for 12 years sort of thing. So, or at least, 7, 8, 9 sort of thing. So I got very lucky. And so then off I go, straight from the courtroom down to jail. Or down to jail, they take you down an elevator. You go, you get stripped naked, you get put in your greens, and then you go in the cell and you wait there for a little while. Then you get processed, and that takes a couple of weeks and whatever else. But inevitably, I'm in jail now. Right, so I've gone from suited and booted, driving an Audi on my greens, everything going really well, making money, I'm the man, to literally in greens, in jail, young guy in jail.
Big change.
Big change. Quick.
Jeez. And what was prison like?
What was prison like? It was interesting. So, 2 out of 10 don't recommend. So it was.
I'll take that on board.
Maybe. Wouldn't stay again. No. So I guess again I was like blessed. Yeah. Right? And that's why I always believe like life's happening for you if you're paying attention, you're learning. Yeah. So for me it was for whatever reason I got shafted into the maximum. I was meant to, so how it usually works is like the first time you're meant to go, so you got classos, you got classifications. I think it's like A2, A1, B2, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, C3.
This is just how strict you're locked down.
Yeah, and so like C3 is day release. A1 is supermax. And so most jails when you first go into them, they're like A2 or A1 because everyone goes in. So they can't put you into C2 first because there might be maximum or whatever else. And so where I went, Parklea, I think it was like A2. And so I was there waiting to be classified to be moved to a farm jail because that's what most people, first time in jail, doing less than 2 years, they usually go to a farm jail. They go to, what's it called? Oberon. They usually go to Oberon or something like Young Offenders Program and shit like that. I didn't get the opportunity to do that. I just stayed in Parklea for like 9 months of my 12 months for whatever reason. But I was lucky for that because I've met a lot of people that had been in jail for a long time and I still got a long time to go. lucky for me, I'd done boxing, and I met a couple of like family friends in there. So my good mate Shane, our family friend Robbie, a lot of Aboriginal people in jail. So it was okay in that sort of regard. But they sort of early days, they really took me under my wing and sort of made sure I was doing okay. I was in the cell with them. I was sweet. And then I was training with Shane one day. We're doing pads, and we're looking good on the pads. And Shane's got a reputation; he can fight. Like everyone knows, Shane as a good goer. And so we were training, and then another guy who's like a old head, his name's Terry. He sort of points me out, or gets one of the guys to come up to me and sort of pulls me out. And he's like, "Where are you people from?" Long story short, guy that's really respected in jail, controls a lot of stuff, is a really good fighter. Mentioned to you before, like one of the smartest brains that I've ever met in general, but he'd only seen like 6 months of his adult life, and he's like 35, right? So knows jail really well. And so then me and him started to build a really good relationship, and I sort of got a bit of an understanding about how it's all sort of working and the sort of systems that underlie it, and why there's so many Aboriginal people there and why not, and just how the whole thing's working. You know, it's easier to get drugs in jail than it is on the street. The jail gives you drugs.
Jeez.
Yeah, they give you like synthetic heroin, right? And so that's seems to me like an effort to sort of keep you subdued and things like that, right? And so just really interesting constructs, and it just made me sort of realize, again, it's like if you leave it to the like who are you expecting to come save you, you know? It's like you make the law is the law. Obviously, you can pay for good legal advice and you can do whatever it is, but at the end of the day, like similar to if you don't train or anything, you're gonna end up a fat shit. If you do like drugs, you're gonna end up a drug addict. Like if you don't read books, your brain's not gonna be sharp. You know, if you do read books, your brain is gonna be sharp. Like you're gonna be the sum of your experiences and decisions, right? And at the end of the day, although the wall might be higher for you, it's still the fucking wall. Like you know what it is, so you got to overcome that. You know, I could, like for example, for me, I can always sit here and say, yeah, you know, I didn't have it all mapped out for me. My parents were heroin addicts. I was adopted. My parents went bankrupt. Ended up in house commission through no fault of my own. What do you expect? And everyone's going to agree with me, but I'm still going to be sitting in jail, right? And so if I, in my mind, want to be successful, and I want to drive Rolls Royces and live in mansions and have people do things for me and whatever I want to do, that's my burden to bear. I've got to figure out what are the steps that I need to take, starting from the shit that I'm in, and climb out of that and overcome it. That's up to me, you know? And whether people agree or disagree, they got their own fucking life to live, you know? And so same as with jail, I started to realise, like, there's things out there you might not agree with. I can sit here and say, this is bullshit. Like, for example, I remember one time I needed they give you these dodgy plastic plates, like to eat your dinner with. They just give you these frozen dog shit, man. They're fucking horrible. And so, yeah, they've got buy up, but everything's canned on buy up. So it's like just canned stuff. The best thing you can get is like Serena tuna. You know Serena tuna? That's currency in jail. So yeah, it's $5. Yeah. And so that's that was the best thing you could sort of get. Now, I remember going to a screw. So a screw is like a one of the guards, call him Screw, and asking, there's a guy about my age. He had braces, and he's just like bold guy, trying to look, you can see what's going on, trying to look tough and whatever else. You can see he's like soft body, and he's like, I'm like, oh, I have to knock on the window. It's like a little bar thing that I can sort of see through and talk to her. I'm like, oh, boss, can you give me a plate? And he's like, oh, not right now, I'm busy. We're about to get locked in. I'm like, mate, I need a plate, like to eat dinner. I can't have a plate. And he's like, I told you to go away, but like exerting his sort of authority on me about a dinner plate, which is just sitting under the thing. He just has to grab it and give it to me. He's like, I'm too busy to do that. It literally took him more effort to tell me he's busy than to give me the fucking plate. And I remember getting so angry at that and just being like, you motherfucker, you know, and sort of having a bit of a go about it. But then I remember when I'm going back to my cell, I got the plate off him, but I ended up going back to my cell and thinking, it's like, yeah, well, shouldn't have fucking got locked up. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I remember thinking. It's like, how can I control this? What am I going to do? I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to teach him a lesson. I'm going to beat him up. What's that going to do? It's going to get me more fucking jail, firstly. More of the same. And it's like, how can I actually control this? It's like, well, don't end up in jail in the first place, you know? The cards might be stacked against you, but it's not impossible. And it's even better. Like, you know, if the odds are stacked against you, it's a bigger payout. So, you know, you've got to ultimately take control of that at some point. I remember in jail sort of realising that, you know? So yeah, I don't know. Just it was an interesting experience, but ultimately all of it has become a bit of a weapon and superpower for me. So
So do you think going to prison for you was a good thing?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Firstly, for my mission with Indigenous Wealth Now, because it helps me understand like what are the systems that we have in place, right? So for example, until I went to jail and started meeting more Aboriginal people, I didn't know that Aboriginal people had a lot of cousins. I didn't really know that. I just had my dad, who's black as the ace of spades, right? Like Auntie Heather, my mum, and like my brother and sister, they danced open ceremony. Like we just were like, okay, we're Aboriginal. We grew up in Western Sydney, so everyone's something, you know? It's like, oh, we're Aboriginal. They're fucking Lebanese. Like they're Chinese. Like whatever. We're all Aussies, but you know, what's your background? Ours is Aboriginal. Didn't really know that a lot of Aboriginal people have a lot of cousins, and the reason for that is Dad was stolen. I was adopted. Like that's the two Aboriginal sort of inception men in our family, and Dad never got to meet his mum, right? And if I follow his journey, right? So what had happened with him was that his mum was in a place called Cootamundra Girls Home. She's a Mitchell. Her name's Olive Mitchell, and so she was in a place called Cootamundra Girls Home, which is, as we know it now, like a terrible sort of child sex slavery fucking it's horrible, right? Lots of different boys and girls homes all around New South Wales, Victoria and the rest of Australia where they would do horrible things, right? And basically they would take all the Aboriginal girls there to Cootamundra Girls Home and they would sort of be trained how to be basically maids. She got pregnant somehow, right? We fucking know how. And then because she's pregnant, she can't work, so they ship her off to South Sydney Hospital to have the baby, which is my dad. She has the baby. 2 days later, Dad's gone. She's gone back to Cootamundra. They don't meet again. That's it.
Wow.
Right? And so basically, when he grew of age, because he was adopted, he was put into forced adoption. He wasn't taken and put into boys' homes. So he was lucky. He was one of the lucky ones. So my auntie, Heather, had found his adoption papers, and she was, 13 or 14-year-old girl or whatever she was. She's like, look here, you're adopted. And he's just like, holy fucking hell, right? And so then he's gone on this journey of like looking for his mum. Then when he's met my mum's like staunch, right? So she was like always pushing it, always like, you got to find your mum, and looking. And they would try and speak to government agencies, and they wouldn't. They would say, oh, she's dead. And, oh, she's doesn't want you. Oh, and that went off 20 years. So I think it was about 39. He had found out where she was and actually found her, but she died 1 year later. 1 year before that. Sorry.
Oh,
so he was 1 year too late off of his 20 years of like looking for her. And so then ultimately like defeated, then he's adopted me. And so that was like the story of like my dad, unfortunately. And so where I get a lot of that is because I understood that relatively young. And definitely now. And so I feel obligated as an Aboriginal person to become successful, to become a good example of what an Aboriginal person can do regardless of whatever odds you want to stack against me. Like whatever you want to do, you want to be like, okay, highest incarceration rates. If I jaywalk across the street, no worries, I press the fucking button every time. If I look at you the wrong way, no problem, I wear glasses. Like I'm going to go to jail, I'll do it. I'll put all my money on the best lawyers, and I'll make sure I don't go to fucking jail. Like I'll do whatever I have to do to overcome my odds. I'm not gonna wait for them to be the average odds of everyone else because I'm not like everyone else, and I don't want to be like everyone else. 99% of people don't know what fucking day it is, so I don't want to hold myself to their standards. I want to hold myself to mine, and if I want to be something super successful, then I'm gonna wear that, whether I'm Aboriginal or not, whether I'm a cup of tea with a bit of milk in it, doesn't fucking matter to anyone else except me. And so I know who I am, and so I'm gonna go out there and for my dad, and for his mum, and for where my people come from, which I'm ultimately not exactly connected to because of how this has all gone. I'm gonna do our people proud, regardless. But more importantly, I'm gonna do myself proud, and I'm gonna give other people an example of what an Aboriginal person can do regardless, So I've gone through all that. Like my parents, I was literally a heroin baby. I got pictures of me when I was a baby. I don't look like a fucking baby. I look like an alien, right? And so, legit. And so then going to jail, Supermax fucking prison, you know, got a criminal record size of a fucking Bible, you know, I get pulled over, I'm getting arrested. Like, mate, you know, can't take a risk with you. That's what happens to me. And so, but that's my cross to bear. And so I've got to overcome that, and I will, and I'm determined to. And so that's the difference, I guess. So it was 100% a blessing for me, because I sort of got to sit in the pit of like, this is what happens if you leave your future up to everyone else, and if you follow that path of like, well, of course he's done that, and of course he's did that, and of course he did that, and we can logic ourselves to death if we want, but ultimately that's not the future I want. So I've got to make different decisions.
Yeah, I think it can be really dangerous to accept a victim mentality, and it sounds like you've chosen, I'm not going to. I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to go and get what I want.
Yeah, that's right. I've got like a saying, you know, it's the same boiling water that softens a potato hardens an egg.
Yes.
So it's not the circumstances you're in, it's what you're made of. And you get to, because you've got consciousness, you get to make that decision around what you're made of. You know, you're gonna let this turn you into a potato, soft and mushy, or you're gonna be a boiled egg to make you hard. Which one? You know, and you get to make that. You got to make that decision every time.
Wow, I love that. You've done a lot since being in prison. You're very successful now. Tell me about that.
All right. So got lots of tax debt. No, I'm joking. No. So we've gone on now. So I guess what I've done now is I've just continued to use property investment as my vehicle. Right?
Why property? I know you touched on it earlier,
Yeah.
is that you kind of did a little bit of research when you were a young fella, but now that you're older, I'm assuming that's backed by something more, or is it just that you've stuck with what you always liked?
No, so it's just worked. So through all that, me going to jail. So I got a story. So the property that I bought, my first property, I had to sell it while I was in jail because it was a delayed registration block of land. So it was meant to settle while I was in jail. It didn't end up settling, but it was meant to. So we sold it while I was in jail. Somehow someone came and see me and I signed the forms. Don't worry about that, right? And so and I sold it for a $64,000 profit. So I made profit while I was in jail. 6 minute. I'm not sure if you know, but there's only 6 minute phone calls in jail. Not exactly, you know, not exactly great grounds for doing a deal, but made it work.
Yeah.
And I bet no fucking other agent out there can say that they did that, right? And so, so property for me has always been my like saving grace, you know. So then I've gone on to buy lots of investment properties. I've helped my parents buy a home, got them out of housing commission, started paying their mortgage. Obviously, that's like negative debt, not necessarily property investment, but I was able to use property to dictate our own future, right? And so that's the thing that's always just worked, because you buy a property, it's very boring. It sort of sits around in the background, rent comes in the account, it goes back out, there's a little bit left over, equity goes up, you make a loan application. Like there's not that many actions you take around owning your property versus business, or even working versus working a job. I've got to wake up every day. I've got to make sure I've got my meals. I've got to make sure my clothes are fucking ready. Like, my whole life is pointed to me spending my 8 or 10 hours a day at earning that income. Whereas if I own $1 million worth of property, that grows by 10% that year, I made $100,000. Most people work 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week to get $100,000. All right, now it comes in a different form, but you're still netting that same amount in some way, shape, or form. And so for me, it's always been the thing that is going to give me the best return. That on top of passive income. So when you start generating passive income, then the whole game changes, and there's literally no need. I'm making more passive income over here than I would work a 40 or 50 hour job. So why would I do that? So you funnel more of that money into assets. And so for me, it's always been the vehicle. And then I thought, you know, I can't be the most successful at doing this. I still don't have any fucking money, right? And so then I was like, well, imagine, and I was even talking to people about it in jail, but I could see, it was like, what are you talking about? I own property that's for rich people. And I sort of, what I understood because of my work experience, things like that rich people become so through property, not the other way around. You don't become rich then invest in property. You invest in property, then you become rich, you know? And so, so that was sort of the thing for me. And so when I got out of jail, I started this business with sort of a friend. I went through that period. Not like I wasn't part of, like, let's not get this wrong. I wasn't like 50-50 or anything like that. I was definitely the small guy in this, but I was the one willing to do all the work. Right, and so it helped me understand how to build a team, run a business, like this, do all that, and I've done that for a couple of years. Cut my teeth, done lots of property transactions, and everything went really well. Made lots of money, moved myself out of housing commission, started renting a property for my parents. Already had a property by then. So then once that property had grown, I bought another property plus a home for my parents, and I moved them out like that. So that went like that. Then the business relationship had sort of dissolved, didn't work, and then I was moving on to my next thing. And so I got into property. I got into what I'm doing now in 2020. So 5 years ago, I started my company now, which is Indigenous Wealth. And so Indigenous Wealth exists to help Aboriginal people become successful. So property investment is the core vehicle, but by going down the route of trying to understand the finance landscape for Aboriginal people, that hand in hand with how history has gone for our people, means I understand where we are at as a people, right? And where we're at is that for the last 250 years, we've been getting colonised. Only for the last 50 years has it been possible for Aboriginal people to actually become successful, right? So I'll tell you this little story. So there's a boundary street in most cities. The boundary street represents where the boundary was that Aboriginal people were allowed to go into. We weren't allowed past that boundary, right? We have to live outside of that.
Yeah, wow.
You could, hey?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we could come in unless you had a fucking card, right? So only special. And then you'd have to have someone come with you, or depending on state by state what would happen. But long story short, where do you think all the banks were? We weren't on the outside of the fucking boundary, that's for sure. And so we just literally didn't have access to the same services at all. And so generational wealth has largely been off the table for Aboriginal people until now. Now, there's a lot of people like me, cycle breakers, ones that have more opportunity or just as much opportunity as everyone else. We don't have the know-how because we're the first in our whole bloodline for however many thousand years to even have this opportunity, because we weren't colonised before, we're only colonised now, so it's a very different world. And so these are just the tools or weapons like of the future, right? We used to fight however we used to fight, right? But now, I think us as Aboriginal people, we need to fight that in a different way. We need to become shining examples of what surviving is, right? So we survived now. Now we have the opportunity to thrive, and I feel like us as Aboriginal people, we have the obligation to thrive, because if I think about my dad and his mum, what they had to go through compared to what I'm going through are very different. It's a very different world. And so I almost owe it to them to put myself in the rooms where maybe I'm not accepted just yet, but they have to accept me now. It's very different. They can't just shoot me in the street or kick me out or because I'm Aboriginal or fucking put me on the outside of the boundary or anything like that. I can wiggle my way into these rooms. I can figure out what it is that they know how to do, and I can use that for my own benefit. And property investing is just the easy one. We all live in houses. I can buy houses in rich white areas, and I can rent them out to rich white families, and I can be an Aboriginal person with a massive criminal record and do that. And I can use that and build wealth and generate lots of wealth and use that wealth to serve me and my family. And I can use that wealth to serve me and my family and help us get access to bigger and better opportunities that mean I don't have to just go to work and cut a paycheck. I can go be a doctor, a sports person, a leader, an artist, a bum if I want. Doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want to do. Right? And so that opportunity hasn't been there for Aboriginal people until now. And so Indigenous wealth sort of exists to encapsulate all of the, I guess, opportunities that work for our people and mobilise them. So property investment, we do accounting, financial planning. We also do finance now as well. And then we'll be moving to do insurance and some other things too. So like a one-stop shop. And then we'll be moving on to some other bigger things after that.
Yeah, that's great. So do you think that the system is then now easier or better for you than it's ever been?
Yeah. So there's organisations out there, government-funded initiatives and things like that, and we could sort of be segmented, whereas there's no obligation now to use them. And maybe there wasn't before, but I guess they have more mental real estate. Whereas like with a quick sort of Google search, I can sort of see what else is out there and figure out if I'm eligible to do it. So yeah, I think for us it's like to not fall into the trap of believing that we need special sort of treatment, you know. And definitely we've been like hard done by in our own country, 100%. Like I can attest to that. Obviously, look at my family, right? But it doesn't serve me to believe that I can't succeed without it. I actually believe that, you know, it's like give me the same set of tools and we can play the same game and you can be playing it for 10 years. I don't give a shit. But after a couple of games, me continuing, I'm going to beat you and you're going to have to keep playing the game with me, you know? And so that's how I want to see it, is like let the bar be whatever the bar's got to be as long as we can achieve the same things. Whereas through these government-funded initiatives and things like that, the ceiling is just, it's not a ceiling, it's a step. And so we just can't achieve the same level of success as everyone else if we go down this Aboriginal basket, or allow people to continue to put us in this basket. And so that's what I've always believed. It's like you gotta free ourselves from that.
Yeah. What do you say, Brad, to people that say they can't afford a house or can't save a deposit?
If you work a job, then you can save. So, firstly, education is key. Read books, right? What have other wealthy people done? Because they all go through the same really successful people anyway, super successful people. Most of the people that you work with that you think are successful are not fucking successful, right? They're still working their ass off. They're up to their eyeballs in finance. They work really hard to impress other people. But if we talk about like really wealthy people, they've usually come from the absolute bottom and figured out what works. And the first thing people do is like a lot of these successful people will say, and I'll be one of them, is pay yourself first. You got to learn how to pay yourself first. You got to learn how to actually prioritize that goal. You can't let it keep being this pipe dream. It's like, well, you know, I've got this goal of buying a property. For me, I knew property was always my vehicle, so I put all my money towards property. All right. If I have to sacrifice a bill or two, if I have to sacrifice going out, if I have to sacrifice something, then I will, because nothing's more important than me actually becoming successful. Because I can go out this weekend, I can go out next weekend, I'm still going to be fucking poor, right? And so if this is my vehicle, then you got to prioritize that accordingly.
Yeah.
And so paying yourself first means like figure out how much you can actually put away in savings and do that first, and then pay your bills and do all the other things, and whatever's left, you know, that's going to put pressure on the things that are like weak that you don't really need. But let that be an actual priority. Most people don't prioritize it. They're like, well, I've got to, you know, son sport, and I've got to do the groceries and phone bill this week, and that's behind, and I've got to do that, and you know, car payment, and those things are all justified for sure. But if it means like you're making zero progress, then that's not sustainable. Either you're going to have to get a better job, invest in a higher income earning skill, or stop spending money on bullshit and do that for a prolonged period of time. And once you get enough money behind you, buy that first property, buy that second property. Also, a lot of people that haven't bought property before, so you got first home buyers, so that's cheap to get in the market. Single parents, even better. So if there's a will, if you really want to, then you'll find a way. If you think it's too hard, then it's going to keep being too hard. I guess there's another saying. So you know, he who says he can, he who says he can't, they're both right. Right. So if you're telling me you can't save a deposit, you're going to be right in that. But if you tell me that you can, but it's going to take a long time, or maybe it's not going to take a long time, then that can as well. You know. So figure out what works and speak to someone that's done it. Don't speak to some people that haven't done it. Don't take advice from people that ain't got shit that you want.
Yeah, it's true. You just got to be really disciplined with how you approach money. Yeah. Brad, what for you looking forward is your ultimate mission? Like, what are you wanting to achieve over the next few years?
So some of the goals that we're setting our sights on now is like $2.5 billion worth of wealth via property investing for Aboriginal people. It's one of the first things.
Huge.
Over 1,000 Aboriginal millionaires created through property investment. And another goal, which is I want our people to become overrepresented in some of the top percentiles in wealth. Property investment is one of them. I think we've got a genuine opportunity to become some of the most successful people in Australia. And I'll be working every day to see that through. But through the people that I interact with, cycle breakers, that one or two in each family that are fed up with the dictating of our own narrative, and they want to take that into their own hands, they've got the capacity and the potential to do it. It's just about making sure that we've got the tools to do so. That's what Indigenous wealth is here for. I really think that we have a genuine opportunity to do that. And so I want to see Aboriginal people sitting in the higher percentiles of wealth, similar to like the UAE and other countries, you know, like their Indigenous population or the people that come from there are some of the wealthiest. And so that's what I want for Australia. Interesting.
Brad, where can someone find out more about you?
You can't. No. So if you go, look us up on. If you just do a Google search, there's going to be lots of stuff pop up. Catch us on Instagram, Indigenous Wealth, indigenouswealth.com.au. That's our website. That's currently going through a bit of renovation, so please bear in mind that was made 5 years ago. But yeah, catch us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah, we'd love to catch up.
And Brad, if this was your last podcast, what's something that you'd want someone to take away from it?
Yeah, same boiling water that softens a potato hardens the egg. It's not the circumstances that you're in, it's what you're made of, right? And so have the courage to actually dictate your own future based on what it is that you want, and don't let anything get in your way of that, because it's all bullshit. The only thing that you have is your own two eyes, your own heart, like and what you're willing to do. And so you're going to be the sum of your actions and your decisions. So make sure you're making decisions that go towards that and nothing else.
Brad, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Tate. Appreciate it, brother.